Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blabbit. As most of you know, we come here each week with fantastic guests that share their experiences, their backgrounds, so that we can learn from one another. For those of you who may not have been here before, my name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working for people with the better part of the last 2 decades to become better communicators, better listeners, so that they may be a little bit better or more persuasive to be better at sales. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, Glenn. Thank you. Yes, hi, everybody. For those of you tuning in, many of you already know Glenn and I as the hosts of Blabbit, but for those of you tuning in for the first time, I am a public speaking coach and a presentation expert out of New York City. And I work with people about overcoming their fear of communicating and also their enhancing their ability to be more clear. In other words, deliver messages that really resonate. We'd like to welcome our guest here to Blabbit. Mark, please let everyone know a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Glenn. My name is Mark Moskowitz, and I am an author, a coach, and a public speaker. I would say my mission is to get people to understand that they have all the power from within themselves to achieve all the successes that they could possibly want in life. We have to get our self-esteem and our self-image in a good place. And once we do that, the sky is the limit for all the success and fulfillment and happiness we could possibly ever go after.
Awesome. Were you going to say something else?
No, go ahead.
Well, again, thank you for joining us today. With looking through your profile, it seems like you may have reinvented yourself, like some of us have from time to time over our lives. So would you kind of, share a little bit about your journey a little bit and about reinventing yourself and, deciding to change course in your life and taking advantage
Sure.
of different situations you encountered?
So, my story is an interesting one, I think, and I had a career in finance on Wall Street for about 28 years, and I found myself in a very unfortunate spot where my life was emotionally spiraling out of control, and unfortunately in a desperate and difficult situation, and I was managing a hedge fund, and I used some of the money in the fund for my own personal use, and the FBI tends to frown against that. So I found myself on the wrong side of a guilty plea and wound up going to a federal prison camp in Otisville, New York. I'm 53 years old, so I was a child of the personal development movement. I love Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and all the gurus, and I still do. And those were great words, but they never quite stuck within me. I was never able to make the progress that I always wanted to. So as you enter into prison, you kind of feel like, all right, here's my opportunity to really be at the bottom. You think there's all these different bottoms on the way down. I'm like, okay, if this is not the bottom, then I'm really in big trouble. So I better figure it out. So I had a lot of motivation to reinvent myself, to figure out what had been going wrong with my life, that put me in the situation that I was in. And it was a very transformative time for me, and I'm happy to say that I used my time very well. The federal system is not always too hot to rehabilitate. There's not a lot of programs in there. It really does come from self-determination and kind of taking it step by step and figuring it out on your own.
So it's not the wolf of Wall Street, it's the muskrat of hedge funds?
Yeah, I guess that's probably a good way to put it, sure.
Well, let me ask you this, Mark. When you were in that situation, were there other like-minded people? Was there any kind of a support system that helped you to do this? Or was it totally by your own momentum, your own realization that this transformation occurred?
Paul, it's a great question, because when I surrendered to prison, I was really expecting there to be these great programs, and I was expecting there to be like, okay, today you're going to do this, and tomorrow you're going to do that, and boom, 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 down the line. And there really was none of that. So it took me about a month or two to really get acclimated to life, because it is a difficult life, and I was in a camp. I wasn't in a high security place, but it's still difficult. You're emotionally a wreck. You're away from your family. It's very uncomfortable. You're sleeping on these metal slabs with an inch or two of a mattress. So it takes you a little bit of time to get used to just the daily life, even if you were to just move towns, it might feel a little different. The coffee shops is different or whatever. So it took me a month or two to really start to get acclimated. And I found that there was other people who were looking to do some work, but people in prison tend to be very guarded. They want to get to know you before they're willing to open up to themselves. And I will say it was a generally small part of the population. Maybe 10 or 12 guys really were into personal development and working on themselves. Unfortunately, a lot of the other people tended to play the blame game on other people, which I did as well. Blaming the judge and the system and not owning up to what they did wrong. So they kind of lived out their sentence with that attitude. So for me, like I said, I pled guilty pretty quickly. I was ready to kind of fix it and move on from there. And as the universe does, it starts to open up people to you that are become like-minded. So initially, as some of those people that were guarded, eventually they started opening up to me as they saw me doing my work and were more willing to share their journeys with me.
It's kind of interesting, Paul, as we always have these guests come on and we talk about different scenarios, different situations, how much similarity it is to every day. So, it's not much different than everyday people in work that are guarded, that are in denial, that don't want to address situations they have. And as we've talked about before in the last year or two, a lot of people have had to react because of the situation they're in. Maybe not as extreme as what you're talking to, but again, if we don't take the time to take a look at stuff and react to our situation and find ways to make ourselves better, you're never going to be there. One thing I'm interested a little bit from being someone that was in the military is a little bit of, I'm going to call maybe PTSD and re-indoctrination into normal life. Just to give you a little bit of background, I was in Desert Storm, lived in the Middle East one day. 24 hours later or so, we're in Chicago, and the next day I'm home. So you go from being in a war zone to you're around everybody, and you're looking around to kind of see what's going on behind you. It was hard kind of going back and re-engaging with society. Would you share a little bit about your experience and if that was somewhat similar?
That's a very interesting point, Glenn. And it's actually towards the end of the story that I usually tell it, but I'm happy to bring it up now. And that is, I served 2 years in the actual prison. I was sentenced to 33 months. In the federal system, you get immediately a 15% good time credit, which they can take away from you if you're not good. So you serve 85% of your time. So I served 24 months in Otisville, and then I served 4 months on home confinement. And in August of 2019, I received the message that I received the notice that I'd be going to home confinement in a month. And of course, you're excited. You're like, okay, I've gotten to the place where I wanted to get to. But to speak to your point, you start to get a little bit nervous. You think to yourself, okay, here I am in this somewhat sterile environment. You don't have your cell phone, which is such a distraction today. You don't have all the trappings of being outside, having to shuttle the kids around and paying bills and all that. So you have this sterile environment. So you're like, hey, did I really learn what I think I learned? Did I really improve the way I think I improved? It's very important I didn't know until I got out. So yes, I did have some of that jitters going into it. And then I'll tell you a quick story. And that is when you're on home confinement, it's actually quite restrictive. You have to put in for passes to go everywhere you want. So you have to put them in a week in advance. So if you want to go to the supermarket, if you want to go get a haircut, you have to put that in a week in advance. So I put in for a pass to go to my local supermarket, ShopRite. And I show up and I start having my list. I start putting things in my cart. And there was this huge feeling of overwhelm that came from all the choices. When you're in prison, we have a commissary sheet, and your choice for peanut butter is smooth or crunchy. You have no choice for detergent. You have no choice for toothpaste. It's all just so here I am all of a sudden staring at this wall of peanut butter, and it overtook me. It really did. And I left my cart and I walked out. And I was like kind of a shell of a man for that moment. But then, I did the work that I've been doing. I started going back to my places of gratitude and feeling that I'm ready for this. I know I'm ready for this. And, then I put in for another pass for the next week and I did it and I got through it okay. But it was a feeling I was not prepared for because I was only in for 2 years, and 2 years is a long time, but there were some guys that I was in with that were in for 20, 25 years. when they left, they had never seen Google or a cell phone, or a smartphone. So that's really acclimated. So even me, just in my short amount of time, I had a little bit of, I don't know if I'd call it PTSD, but certainly a lot of anxiety about coming out. And then also that one incident in the supermarket.
Do you find that the tearing down and also the making yourself more emotionally available, does that make your relationships richer, your networking richer, your ability to show up? Has that changed since this experience? And obviously I'm asking for the better.
Sure, of course. And that's one of the missions I really speak to is being authentic. And anyone who's on LinkedIn and reading my posts know that I put it all out there. I have no problem. And I struggled with self-esteem. That was really the lesson that I learned from me. My self-image was one of, I did not love myself. I didn't feel I was worthy of success or feel like I was worthy of having trusting relationships. So I was always extremely guarded myself. And when I was really spiraling, I had not one person on this earth that I felt I could talk to. And it was a very lonely experience. And here I am living in a nice town with lots and lots of friends and family, but yet there was not one soul that I could trust. And that was with it. That's me. That wasn't them. Of course, I was blaming them at the time because my self-esteem wasn't healthy enough to understand that. But I was able to overcome that. And now I love putting it out there. And, I go to parties and I'm the most popular person there because everybody wants to hear what life is like in prison. And the jaw dropping, I wish I could get pictures of people's expressions when I tell them that I have a criminal record. It's pretty comical. So yes, it's much better. And having someone that you feel that you can trust is so key. And now I have this wonderful group of people, both in the networking and the business world and in my personal life, that I know I could share anything with that I need to. And so it's really liberating. It's actually a fun life to live.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting the way that you frame it, and you and I, Glenn, we all know that the way you frame a story is so important. But with the way that you embrace that experience, it does make it seem like this was one of the best things that ever happened to you because of that transition. However, I know that most people, given the choice, would not want to have to wind up 2 years in prison. So from your experience, are there any warning signs? Are there any, and I know that's a really general statement, but the idea of taking responsibility, are there warning signs? Are there moments where you find yourself hiding, diverting, reflecting, doing all of those things? What's your take on that?
So now looking backwards, it's easier for me to answer that question than being in the moment. Obviously, had I just, yes, I lied to everybody, including myself, and I hid from the world, and I did everything I could do to keep this a secret, because part of the lying to myself is I can get this back. I can figure it out. I'm a smart guy. I'm well educated. I've had a great career. I can figure this out. I don't need to. I'm going to get it all done, and I'm going to walk away like Teflon, which is a lie, obviously, but you keep fooling and you keep telling yourself. So looking backwards, the warning signs are that you have to be honest with yourself. I mean, we are creatures that, we can say, I'm going on a diet, and then break the diet 3 hours later and say, I'm going on a diet. We could just keep kind of going into that roller coaster and that's general cycle. So you need to be honest with yourself. You need to have someone who can hold you accountable, which I think is why the concept of coaching appeals so much to me. I wish I had somebody that I felt that I could have really trusted with this. And again, I know that a lot of that was within me, but so the warning signs are that you're just not performing at your best. And I know one thing I really wanted to talk about was having some time to be in silence and having some time to reflect. I never took that time. And really in prison, even though your day is somewhat structured, I did go to work every day on the compound, but there's a lot of time to think and reflect, and you don't have the distractions of your cell phone. So if you feel like you are lying to yourself, maybe the best stop mechanism is take an hour, take 10 minutes, not even an hour, take 10 minutes and say, where's my life? What am I doing? Ask yourself some good questions. What is going on? Can I recover from this? How are my relationships? How is my relationship with myself? And and really be pensive and really not be afraid to answer those questions. Because I was living in fear all the time. I was living in fear of getting caught. I was living in fear of all the repercussions of getting caught. And all I did was really just make it worse. And had I been open and honest with myself, I probably could have avoided those 2 years. And to your point, yes, please don't go to prison. I mean, it was transformative for me, but I would like to have been transformative somewhere else, because it does affect you your whole life. I mean, I will have a criminal record now forever, and it's not easy to get a job, and it's not easy to get an apartment. It's not easy to do anything. It's not easy to date. So please avoid prison at all costs.
Well, it may have taken that extreme, but let's kind of take a look at that, to what you mentioned about, as far as I thought I could do it. I was lying to myself. I could fix this tomorrow. I can fix it the next day. I think anyone that's been in a corporate environment, that's been in management, has different things that they're doing, maybe not to a legal extent, but to, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to do this next week. I'm going to be okay. And they're lying to themselves instead of just being transparent, owning what they're doing, admitting they have an inefficiency. So from your harsh experience of realizing this, how would you go back upon looking at yourself back then to say, how do I stop this? How do I identify that I have a problem that I'm not addressing, so that you can move forward and be a better version of yourself?
For me, a lot of what my life is coming down to now is simply having systems in place, and systems that help me keep myself accountable and have other people help me be accountable. Also, my coach's coach. So I just have a routine, and I have my check-ins with myself on a daily basis. Like I was talking about, like, life is busier now than it was in prison, but I do continue to follow the laws and the rules that I spent in there, in terms of taking some time for thought, taking some time to reflect every day. And I ask myself certain questions. And I'm not afraid now to look in the mirror, because I did raise my self-esteem, and I did get to the point where I can be honest with myself. That unhealthy self-esteem is, from what I've learned, is all tied into our ego, and our ego really has one job, and that is to protect ourselves from pain. So that's why it's so easy to blame other people for our pain, because we can say, hey, I'm a good guy. I would never steal money. It was my ex-wife who made me steal money, or my parents didn't love me enough, so that's why I stole the money. So being able to own it, being able to really, like what I say, own your power, own your faults and your good things too. So being able to have that healthy self-esteem has allowed me to be brutally honest with myself and use those systems for my best advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and when you're talking, if I could real quick, Paul, I mean, I've seen so many people make these comments, and they're associative. My boss is a put, so I'm going to do this. My boss is a pain in my butt, so I'm not going to do that. And it doesn't take much before you start wasting 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour and stuff a day. And inevitably that's going to fall upon you, but we blame it upon somebody else until all of a sudden we lose our job. And it was like, I don't know why they did this. Well, it was because of what I did. Maybe not as much as what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something. One thing I've really learned, and I'm very happy to say that I have a really great relationship with my mother now. Unfortunately, my father passed while I was in prison. So that was a tough thing to deal with, but I have a great relationship with my mother. We've really healed from some of the pain of the past. And really what I learned is, and this is really, I think, true in the business world, is that the way we perceive someone talking to us has a lot to do with our own fragility. When our ego is on guard all the time, someone might make a passing comment that's really not a big deal, but all of a sudden we take it so defensively, like, oh my goodness, my boss really hates me because he didn't give me all the candy and unicorns that I needed for the day. So, we need to raise those levels of self-esteem to a healthy place. There's over self-esteem, which is narcissism, but we need to be healthy so we can understand what criticism means, and that it's constructive for the most part. My perception of growing up was, I grew up in a financially very well-off home, but there was a lack of emotional stability there. There's a lack of emotional love. And my perception is my reality. And it did impact directly decisions I had made. Like, I went into Wall Street because that's what my father did. And I played golf because my father was a great golfer. So I wanted to be a golfer. And wanted to get his love that way. So I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't living my life. I wasn't living the things that I wanted to do. I've come to grips with all of that. And now it's allowed me to make better decisions. It's allowed me to accept criticism for what it is. And it's allowed me to own my own power and take responsibility for every decision I make. Nobody can tell me how to feel anymore. And it feels great. It feels wonderful.
Well, now, as a coach, you can easily, or rather your clients can easily determine that you have been there and done that. So when you initially engage with someone, are there some go-to questions that you use, that you pose to a potential client to begin to get that process going of recognizing the honesty, the authenticity that they need to embrace in order to make any sort of a change?
I love to dive deep into what their biggest desires are to get out of coaching, and really to get very clear on that, get a lot of clarity on those points. And I'm also a big believer in small steps. Little steps at a time add up over the course of 3 months, 6 months, a year. So, we can't go to the gym once and expect to be in great shape. We have to do it every day. So for me, as a coach, it's about asking good questions to dive deep into what you're looking for. But then it's also about getting that accountability structure set up. So, I'm not looking for you to move mountains on day one. I just want you to maybe get out of bed, maybe, have that hard conversation with your boss, right? Have that hard conversation with your spouse, understand what you're really looking for in life. And, my coaching I think of it as very holistic because it is a business coaching, but it's also, you have to bring your person into business. You can't split off the two. So if you're unhappy, if you're defensive, then you're going to have to work on that side of it outside of the office, and everything else will get better as well. So, the conversations are pretty free form because I want to see where they're going with it. And I don't want them to, you do have to build rapport with people. I don't like to just pepper questions at people, right? So you want to build that rapport, get to know them, and then help as much as you can, but also knowing that it's going to be a process that's going to take time. But then at the end, you should feel really good. You should have the systems in place for personal success, for business success. And I like people to have a bit of a mission, a charitable mission, because I do think that just helps, when we live in such a fortunate society that we're in, where we do have a million choices of peanut butter, it's nice to give back. So have something else that's also there as well.
Questions and consultations. Have we ever talked about that, Paul? Am I frozen?
No, I think Paul.
Okay, all good. Okay, so I want to bounce back a little bit to a comment you've made a couple times about structure and systems. And the reason I want to talk about that, I work in the digital realm, and it's hard for some people to understand that when you get systems, when you get structure, how much more you can accomplish on the same period of time as when you don't have structure and you don't have systems. To the point where, having people to do different things because everything is well structured within a system, or having a schedule to where I know I'm spending X amount of this next 45 minutes on this, then I get a 15-minute break. I'm spending next 25 minutes on this, and I get a 5-minute break. So again, you're working, but you're also having peace of mind. Would you share a little bit about your perception and your ideas when it comes to structure and systems?
Sure. I love what you're saying, Glenn. It has to be spelled out. It can't just be like this. Okay, today I'm going to do this and that. And I'm a big repetition is the mother of skill type of person. Like my life to other people might look very boring and structured, but that's what helps me the best. Like if I have to go off on being being spontaneous, that's usually a little bit of a problem for me. So I figure out when I'm going to be spontaneous. So
I'm the same way.
What's that?
I'm the same way. Glenn's heard me say, and I say this to my clients all the time, I love to be prepared to be spontaneous. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
So, my systems have developed over time for me, and it's taken time for me to get to the point where I'm comfortable with how my systems play out every day. And I know that every day I need to move. I need to be physical. I need to primarily watch what I eat. I need to be spiritual. I need to have that figured in. I need to focus on my business. And then I need to obviously focus on my personal life as well. The business aspect of it, I do believe it has to be broken down into what are your most important items for the day. If we have a to-do list of 10 items, all 10 of them are not equal. Like they're not all 10% and equaling 100% of the pie. Some are 50% of the pie. Some are 40%. So we need to have our to-do list top to bottom importance in the level of importance, because why take care of the least important thing first? It's just, it might be the quickest to do. So in that case, if you want that dopamine rush, that's fine too. But for me, it's top to bottom. Get me that important thing, because that gets the monkey off my shoulder. That gets the monkey off my back. And I think another part of my system, which is important, and I post this every Friday because I believe in a little bit of work on the weekend. A little bit. I always say, give me 3 hours on the weekend. That's all I ask. An hour Saturday morning, an hour Sunday morning, and an hour Sunday night. And on Saturday morning, review the past week. What did you miss? Like what's going to hang over your head all weekend if you don't get it cleaned up? What email didn't you send out? What proposal do you need to fix? What call maybe needs to be made on Monday morning? So I think like once you clean out the crap from the week that you didn't get done, it's going to free you up to have a better weekend, to have more fun. Then Sunday morning, I like to read something that's going to help my business. So I might read a book about, personal development, or I might watch a video or something that's going to help me be a better coach, be a better author and speaker. And then Sunday night for the hour, I create my list for the week of the most important items first, just as we said. So that's my favorite type of system. And I love the weekends. It's only a few hours. And I love it because the phone's not ringing, the email's not blowing up. It gives us some quiet time. But I think it really gets us in a great frame and a great state of mind to hit the ground running for the week ahead.
Paul, he's talking about my trick of being able to take off every Friday at noon because I get a little bit of work done on the weekends.
Yeah, that's true. You are MIA for most of the weekend.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I tend to still grind it on Saturdays for quite a few hours, but it's the same sort of thing. I'm just preparing for the next week. That's all.
Well, it's funny because obviously, as entrepreneurs, we think a little bit differently. I think that's just in our DNA. So I do think we have a little bit of that whatever it takes mentality. But, I might have a financial advisor that, that works for Merrill Lynch or one of the big companies or something. And so for them, they don't really need to be thinking that, 24/7 grind, but they just want to figure out like, okay, how can I fit within the corporate structure and plan my life so my life is a little better and I have a little more clients and all that. So I think there is a bit of that different, like, are you an entrepreneur and everything relies on you? Like the company will fail if you're not working hard at it. Or are you part of a big ecosystem and a big structure and you're just trying to find your way in that ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, I had an interesting experience just last week. I was, again, organizing, planning, strategizing about how to get in touch with new people who haven't seen the sort of thing that I do, people who definitely could use some of the coaching that I do. And then it dawned on me that since networking is all about relationships, I have a lot of existing relationships that I just haven't gone back to. And I made a list of about 70 people. And I just started reaching out to people with emails. How are you doing? LinkedIn messages. What's going on? This and that. And all of a sudden, my calendar got very full with people who just wanted to talk. And it's amazing what happens from that, just from that interaction, because you never know. I have quite a few people saying, well, I'm so glad you got in touch with me. Either we did or we didn't work months, years ago. But I know somebody who was just asking me about this the other day. And then it moves on from there.
And let's talk about different ways of doing that and different ways to re-engage your circle of influence, let's call it. And the reason I'm asking that is, again, I'm back in the Midwest where we're originally from. I haven't been traveling back here much the last couple of years. And so literally I've been here a week and I go and meet with one client to just do some silly little things. And all of a sudden he's like, well, have you called this person? You should call this person. Tell them I said to call you. So that leads to some other doors being open. And just by running around town and stopping and seeing people, it's like, you know what? Can we talk about some stuff you're doing? Or, hey, do you remember Jim? Jim used to, we had breakfast together. You should probably call Jim. It's amazing how just creating those conversations, re-engaging with people who know, like, and trust you, inevitably can all of a sudden start filling up that calendar. So what are you guys doing, or what would you recommend to doing something like that to re-engage people that you already have relationships with and you're not starting from scratch?
I actually love the way Paul started out that story was by saying, like, I was pensively thinking about, how to build the business. And like, to me, it's what I talked about before, is just taking some of that time to sit back and, just ask yourself a good question. Hey, what's already in my arsenal that I'm just not using, right? You had these 70 connections. They were already there. You didn't have to go create new ones. You just had to sort of re-energize them. From my perspective, it's kind of funny because I live in the same town that I was living in when everything happened. So, and I've had mostly very good reaction from people, but I've had some mixed reaction. So, so re-engaging with people, if I happen to see somebody on the street that I haven't seen yet, and I don't really know how they're going to react to me, I'll kind of like give them a little bit of a sheepish wave and see if they're receptive to that. Or, I've had some people who've blown me off, and that's fine. That's on them. I'm okay with that. So re-engaging on that level has been quite interesting. I happen to have a great story that, because I've been posting on LinkedIn, someone who I was friendly with before everything happened actually reached out to me, and he's like, I tried to get up to Otisville to see you, but life just got too busy. And we recently had dinner, and it was just so nice. To me, that makes me feel great. It's just nice when someone actually goes out of their way to want to be back in your life again. And it makes me feel it feels really good. But again, I think a lot of that is just kind of going back and thinking about, what do you already have in your book of business that you just haven't been really paying attention to? I love Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule, and we all use it, but in that 80%, that's not always giving you so much business. There are people in there that could be. So you do want to focus on the 20% that's giving you most of your business, but do not neglect the 80. So I think having a system, whether it's a really solid CRM or at least a good spreadsheet of your names, and understanding when was the last time you've contacted somebody, those are the things that are invaluable to me, no matter what the cost is every month. I think that's a wonderful tool to have.
Yeah, I just want to go back for a second to the comment you made about seeing people on the street. I think that happens fairly frequently for you. Isn't it true that you have a dual role now as also walking the kids to school?
Sure.
Crossing guard.
I actually took me a second so I have in the town I live in, and as we know across the country, actually there's a shortage of a lot of workers. So I got a call from a friend who's running the crossing guard program for the town that I live in, and he's like, do you want to take a couple of shifts? And I was like, sure. I'm a morning person. I love to get up early. I'm happy to help out, and it's so fun to see the kids, and they're all happy in the morning. I'm dealing with elementary school kids, and the parents are nice, and I think I just have a good energy. I'm always waving and thank you and have a great day. And, so it's just a really nice way to start the day. Like, if you say, thank you and you're welcome to 100 people, you're just going to have a great day. I mean, that's a pretty good way to start the day, right? Yeah.
Now my kids are all grown, but you're seeing these, I'm assuming they're all different ages as they're crossing.
Yeah. So I cross in two places. I cross the middle school, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I cross an elementary school, which is kindergarten through 4th. But they're all so nice. They're polite, and it's just a really nice way to begin the day. So it's fun. I'm so happy that I decided to do it.
Are the elementary school kids and even the middle school kids, you starting to hear the buzz about Halloween? Is that coming back?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I actually had a wonderful situation happen the other day where a girl gave me a candy bar. And she was on her scooter with her parents, and she's like, I want you to have this. And I was amazed. And it was just this beautiful story. And there was a little more to it in terms of just how my energy in the morning has helped her get through some of the tougher times of school, which of course that, made me feel even more special and wonderful. So But yeah, we're definitely all into that. I mean, I don't have a costume yet, and I know it's probably out in the Pacific Ocean somewhere waiting to get to me. But hopefully we can rectify that situation too.
One thing that kind of struck me when you were talking about not knowing how people are going to react to you, how they're going to react to your situation, and it kind of got me thinking. I remember hearing my father tell me when I was young that, as far as true friends in your life, typically you can count those on one hand. And whether it be people at work, associates, people that you network with, how would you, either of you, think that you would identify without something like this major happening in your life? Who are those people in your circle that are more worthy, that are going to be there for you and you for them, without having something like this to really, let's say, break the water up, have a tidal wave, whatever you want to call it? Because I think inevitably we all have run into people who, right, wrong, or indifferent, are a waste of our time. And then some people that are good people that will give and give and give, and you give back to them. So that's just kind of what kind of struck me. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I'd say probably the strongest quality for me is someone who's actually willing to listen to me, because I think that is step number one. Is at times when we need to be heard, we want to be around people who can listen without immediately giving advice or giving judgment. And I know that personally, I'm working on that myself because we as coaches, especially me, I like to give people advice. So I really appreciate someone who is capable and aware enough to just listen. It's a big deal.
I'm glad I let Paul go first. That's a good one. Because that is, I believe in that too. And, I've had to work on my own levels of I'll say judgment, but also advice giving. And, again, something that happened to me in prison, and just through all this pensiveness and through all this learning, I've come to this level of acceptance and understanding that as much as I have to own my power and I have to take responsibility for my actions, everyone else does too. And I think as coaches, our job is to get people to think. I'm definitely a Socratic method type of person where I do like to ask pointed questions, but I'm very slow about it because, like I said, I do want to build that rapport. So I do feel that asking questions is a great way to get people to open up to you. And this I've come to know that people that are going to change want to change. They feel that there's something in their life that's not going right, and they have to have that motivation within inside themselves. So that's part of also what I'm trying to do, is get people to get that motivation behind them. And, sometimes like money's never going to motivate you more than X, Y, or Z. Hopefully it's our family, it's our kids, it's our friends. For me, also, just kind of going back to your question, Glenn, is we all go through stuff. So I do think that we put off an energy, and you probably have a pretty good idea of that energy of that person that you can trust, that you can feel like there's just something that resonates between the two of you. And maybe it's not as harsh as what I went through, but maybe it's a divorce, or maybe it's a bad marriage, or maybe it's, I got a speeding ticket and I don't know what to do about it. It could be anything trivial or big. It's still handled the same way, and it's handled with compassion, right? It's not judgmental, it's compassion. And it's, I'm willing to listen to your story. And if you're asking for my advice, here's what I think you could do. So, I feel like everyone's my best friend now. Like I felt like I had no best friends, and now I feel like everyone I meet is like, because I changed me. I'm sure we all know the great Wayne Dyer quote, right? When you change, the things around you change. So I changed. I made this big commitment to change. So now everybody I look at and everything I do is a reflection of myself, I guess. And I'm happy, and I'm non-judgmental, and I'm acceptance. So that's what I see in other people as well.
Glenn and I, we're big language guys, as you are as well, Mark. And you had a post just this week that really resonated with me. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but I think it's something like you don't get what you want, but you get what you become.
Yes.
Which I just think is brilliant. In fact, I'm going to, give a plug right now because I actually commented back saying, I love that because it eliminates the should or the would. It becomes a will. It's words, but words have such power because it's not what I want. This feels like it's way out here, but what I'm going to become is responsible.
The first step in my own rehabilitation was gratitude. I started from that place because I didn't really know where to start. Like I said, there was no help. So I just remember from all my personal development work, and we had a nice library with some books. And I remember the common theme amongst all of the gurus seemed to be gratitude. So I'm like, okay, let's start there, right? So I started doing these gratitude walks, and I would walk around the camp, and I would just say things that I was grateful for. And at first, it was hard work. And that's why I'm a systems guy, but believing in starting small with one step, right? It was very difficult at first to be grateful and thankful when you're in prison. Like, what could you possibly be thankful for? So I was, I guess, faking it until I make it, right? I'm thankful that I have a place to sleep, and I'm thankful that I have food, and then I'm thankful for, the time to think. And it took me like a solid 2 months. And I write this in the book. I went from someone who was chasing gratitude to being grateful. And that's where this whole concept comes from, that you can't want something, you have to become it. If you want to be fit, then you have to be someone who's likes fitness. You have to be someone who eats healthy. You have to surround yourself with people who are in that same boat. So, and I think through the power of LinkedIn, I mean, I have met some of the most amazing people, you two included, that are just, everyone has this wonderful aura about them, and we're all on the same mission to help. And that's not a coincidence. That is truly the hand of God putting me in touch with people that I could want to be in touch with. So I started getting to this point with gratitude where I was saying things that initially I couldn't be grateful for, like, that I'm away from my children. That was very difficult on me. But eventually I was able to be grateful that my kids are on their path and that they're healthy and that they're happy. And this being of gratitude, being grateful was, I think it catapulted me to the rest of the story. Like, I think without that, I would have languished and never gotten to where I am. So if you're in a bad place, or if you're just in a place where maybe you're having a rough moment, say, I'm thankful for something. Go back to gratitude. In that 1 second, it'll change who you are.
Yeah, it removes that tendency, the urge to complain. It really does, because it just immediately replaces it. Yeah. But you've got, like you said, you have to embrace it. You also bring up an interesting point. And Glenn, I was just thinking about this, the idea of you have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy the people who are around you. Right, Glenn? We've touched on this before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about that briefly before you came on, Paul. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Oh no, I love it. I mean, I think your vibe is your tribe, I guess is the saying now. It's beautiful, right? Like, the vibrations that you're putting out, you tend to get back. And I feel like once a week or twice a week, I just meet the most incredible people on social media. And I was not a big social media person, but because I think there's pockets of it that it gets, a big waste of time, and it's this ridiculous, rush of energy that we get from a like or something. But the positive side of all of this is that I never would have met you two guys, and I never would have met hundreds of people that I think are just really great people. And I don't think I would be as personally developed without YouTube, because I love to watch YouTube videos and I love to feed my brain with all that good stuff. So, and that helps me be the thing I want to be. So immersing yourself in that. And, before we get too far afield, I want to say, like, you can't take on the world. You have to have only a couple of these things that you can truly become. Like, if your laundry list of goals is 15 things, you're never going to get anything done. Like, pick a few and then get those done, and then move on to the next one, and the next one. So, but once you start to become a better person, And once, I shouldn't say better, but I'm sorry. Once you start to become the things that you are desiring, then everything else will just start to unfold as well.
You know what kind of, again, bounced around in my head as we're talking about these things is, we're talking about gratitude and stuff like this. And when you're talking about different people, it's a big difference about what can I do for you instead of what you can do for me. Kind of using what I call the law of reciprocity that we talked about last week, Paul. Because and especially when you're talking about LinkedIn and some of these things, it drives me flipping batty when I connect with someone and they're trying to sell me from the initial. I think a lot of people, whether we're talking about coaching, LinkedIn or whatever, is if they connect in and they said, Mark, what can I do for you? Because when you do that, it's going to come back for you tenfold. And I'm probably not going to delete you as quick as when you're trying to sell me something. Yeah,
I mean, I'm a big believer in that. And another interesting story. So I was out about a year and I had started a new job at a digital marketing agency. And so I'm back on LinkedIn and running around and meeting, getting back to sort of the people that I knew. And there was this guy that I'd been friendly with on LinkedIn. And I came across his profile and I said to him, what are you doing? He's like, I started a networking company that's going to compete with like Latip and BNI. I'm like, okay, good luck with that. And like, if you want to join. And I said to him, like, my network is so blown up. I don't know how I can help. I don't know if I could pass leads on to other people because I just don't know what kind of reaction I'm going to get. He's like, just join and, just add whatever you can. So I started, like, I did a presentation on how to build a LinkedIn profile. So I was helping. I couldn't really help in terms of passing leads because I didn't feel comfortable with doing that. Mm-hmm. Now I feel a little better about it because I feel like I'm more established in the work world again. But I was doing whatever I could, to your point, Glenn, and I agree. I mean, we all get those emails and we all kind of, I hope just at this point, I just delete them without really getting too upset about it. Shouldn't ruin my day. But yeah, I mean, of course, it makes us, it feels, you want to build a relationship. You don't want to feel like you're just simply being sold to. That might be 1980s, 1990s Wolf of Wall Street type stuff, but that doesn't fly in this day and age.
As I keep saying, don't ask me to marry you if we even haven't had a date and held hands yet.
Now, Glenn has heard this story that I'm going to tell, but it's like a mini Mark Moskowitz scenario because it really has to do with when the pandemic hit back in March of 2020. And my business model was totally different. I was used to commuting into New York City, working with people, going to corporate offices and whatnot. That all changed. And it was like an abrupt break. It was just, that was it. And I didn't know what to do. I literally just felt like I don't know what's going to happen next. And I reached out to a bunch of other coaches who are part of the Forbes Coaches Council. And I sent an email, and it's not an email, but rather a LinkedIn direct message. And in that message, I literally said, I feel lost. Does anybody else feel the same way? And can we get together and discuss best practices and try to stay sharp until we figure out what comes next? Mm-hmm. And the response was amazing. So that vulnerability really is the start. In fact, the majority of the guests that we had on in the first 20 or 30 episodes of Blabbit were all of those coaches. And I had no idea that it was going to lead to this. So there's an example of that willingness to go to a more vulnerable place. So I had firsthand experience with that.
Glenn, to actually back up to your point about how do you know if someone's sort of someone you want to be friendly with, I actually have the greatest filter mechanism of all time because I'm a felon. So people are either going to write you off immediately or they're going to say, "Oh, let me hear your story." So it's actually this really interesting filter that I have.
Yeah. Nice.
But it's the same thing, like you were saying, Paul. It's like being vulnerable, being open. People respond to that. It's why do we love movies like Rocky and Rudy and whatever? Because it tugs at our heartstrings. It makes us this. Here was someone who was vulnerable, who was leaving it all out on the field of play. And we resonate with those things, whether it's in business or on the sports field.
Right. We are attracted to, we gravitate toward nobility. We do.
Well, and we've spoken about that quite a few times, and it kind of relates back to what you said in the beginning about being authentic. So many people have walls up, they're guarded, they don't want to let people in. And by doing that, they're keeping people out. When you're authentic, I think you attract more people that are like you, and people that are going to be more authentic back, because you not only talk about your positives, you are sharing your negatives. And if we can all do that a little bit more, I think it just benefits everyone around us.
Sure. I think sometimes as coaches, we want to feel like we're perfect. We want to portray it to the world, at least. Like who would want to hire a coach who's struggling with something else, right? But the truth is that's not the truth. We want to be people. We're not super people. We're not superheroes. We're people. We have issues just like everybody else. So hopefully, and sometimes I'll get angry about something, but instead of letting it ruin my day, it ruins 1 minute of my day. And then I go back to my lessons. I go back to okay, take a deep breath, get back to gratitude, get back to the important parts of the day. That person cutting you off or whatever doesn't matter anymore. And then you just move on. And so none of us are perfect.
I make mistakes every day.
Yeah.
You know who doesn't make a mistake? Someone that doesn't try something different or try something new. And if you're not trying something new, how are you ever going to grow?
Yeah.
Right. Hey, listen, I just want to talk a little bit about your book. Did you actually write the book while you were in prison, or was that after getting out of prison?
It's been after I got out. So there was a point in prison where I knew I was going to spread my message. I just knew that's the reason I was put there. I didn't know the medium. I didn't know really what was going to happen. But I knew I was going to spread it. And through some LinkedIn connections, I found this really wonderful course that helps you write your book. And it's very structured and very systematic, Glenn. And I had written a number of drafts that I got to maybe page 40 or 50 or 60, and then it just went by the wayside. But once I put these systems into place and had someone who was helping me be accountable, my developmental editor, I've been able to structure the book. And right now the book is through the first draft. I'm past my developmental stage, and now I'm onto my editing stage, and that's going to take another couple of months. But the book is about 80% done now, and then it'll take some editing. And it's supposed to be New Degree Press is publishing the book, and it'll be out in sometime spring of this upcoming year, 2022.
Fantastic. It's interesting that you reached out and looked for help in typical fashion. When I wrote my book several years ago, I just went it alone. That probably accounts for the fact that it literally took me 18 months to write it. And I tell everybody I wrote every single day, weekends and holidays as well, every single day. I'm an early riser like you, so I'd get up before anybody else in the house was moving around, and I'd write for 2.5, 3 hours. And I never wrote more than 1.5 pages in a single day.
My developmental editor gave me, I think, the best compliment I've ever gotten. He says, "You're a machine." He's like, "You don't do too much and you don't do too little. You just every week you pump out the exact same amount of effort." And I see it in your writing, because they can see when you log into the software to start writing. He's like, every day you're like 58 minutes, 59 minutes, right around the same time. He's like, "You're just a machine." And to me, that was a good one.
Accountability, baby. That's
it.
What it is. Accountability. Excellent.
Can you believe we breezed through this hour so quickly?
Wonderful.
I can believe it, Glenn. I can believe it.
Well,
given
Mark,
the personalities on this screen. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us this week, Mark. It's been great getting to know you, learning more about you. If anyone that's watching this would want to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
LinkedIn is really my main source. You can just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have a website, markjmoskowitz.com. And that's probably the best way to go back into me.
Excellent. Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure. And I was a little confused. I thought that your book had already been published. So you know what, Glenn, that just gives us another reason to ask Mark back in the spring.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
Pretty simple. Pretty simple. I'm giving everybody fair warning.
I'm signing up. It's contract right now. I'm not getting out of it.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. For everyone watching. We'll see you back at the same places, same time next week. Have a great week, everyone.